to die for. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, how is everyone tonight? Yes, I trust your ScareLA is bewitching. Now tell me, do we have any aspiring witches and warlocks out there? Anyone visited the new Universal Harry Potter? Yes. Well, we have a very special panel for you tonight, revealing what's on the horizon for Halloween. For Halloween Horror Nights at Universal. Yes, my pretties. So please welcome to the stage the men behind the scenes that make you and your guests scream, John Murdy and Chris Williams! Technical difficulties.
You might need one.
I think we need another one because I'd like Chris to speak too, huh? Would you guys like to hear Chris?
I think it's only fair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Witch. How are you guys doing today?
Thank you all for coming out today.
I've never, in my life, I've never had a zombie ballerina troupe open for me. It's awesome. They were fantastic. Give it up for them one more time. It's very foggy in here. I'm John Murdy. I'm creative director, executive producer of Halloween Horror Nights.
I'm Chris Williams. I'm art director of Halloween Horror Nights.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect to see at Halloween Horror Nights 2016. You guys ready for this? So I decided to title this particular presentation, because this is the fourth convention that Chris and I have spoke at this season. So this one's called Christmas with the Devil, in honor of Spinal Tap. Because today we're going to be talking about two of the mazes that we've announced for Halloween Horror Nights 2016. One of them is called Krampus. And the other is the Exorcist. And if we do this in the amount of time that we have today, we're also going to try to do a little announcement for you today as well. And ask a trivia question and give away some front of line passes and an exclusive behind the scene maze tour. All right. Let's get into this. Let's start with Krampus. How many of you guys are familiar with the legend? Right? You know, it's funny because it's really an old world tradition. You know, it wasn't particularly popular here in the United States until, I don't know, maybe like, what do you think, 5 years ago or something? It really started picking up.
And it got really hot, actually.
For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, Krampus is basically the dark side or the shadow side of St. Nicholas or Santa Claus. He deals with the naughty children on Santa's list, and like this old illustration is showing you, he basically, you know, takes them and drags them off to hell. So, perfect subject matter for us. We actually had an experience with Krampus prior to the movie. It was a scare zone. It was called Dark Christmas. How many of you guys saw it?
And that was based on the popularity, what John was talking about, Krampus, that has been really upsurging in the last 5 years or so.
So one of the gentlemen who work with Chris and I think he's here today, his name is Pat Quinn.
He is here.
Patrick, I don't know if you could raise your hand through the fog here and people could give you some love, because Patrick does all the park decor you see at Halloween Horror Nights, and in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think Dark Christmas was the best work that Patrick's ever done in the history of doing Halloween Horror Nights, and he's been with us all 11 years that we've been doing it. I think, in particular, that one was the best.
Yes. You know, we can always count on Pat to think about things a little bit differently than maybe that John and I would come up with. So Pat is just a really integral part to all the park decor and the characters and the design and the costumes that you see.
And this is a really good example. You know, this is our version of Krampus that we did in Dark Christmas, and this does kind of, I think, perfectly reflect Pat Quinn's mind.
Yes.
Because, you know, aside from, you know, the traditional features you'd look to see for Krampus, you know, the kind of goat-like features and the horns, you know, he's got a satchel on the back of his back where he carries the naughty little children off to hell. This is what he looked like in the park.
Yeah.
This was done by Larry Bones and Boneyard Effects. They did the makeup for this.
So that ended up to be a pullover foam latex mask, something really high-end like that, and looks great, huh?
So, you know, we did Krampus in Dark Christmas in 2014, and 2015 we were actually, you know, we were kind of thinking about doing a maze based on Dark Christmas, doing an original one. And I think we were working on, I think it was Dracula Untold, Legendary Pictures.
Yes.
They came down to talk to us, and it was 2014. And we were showing them like, oh, you know, here's the Dracula Untold maze. And we walked out and we turned the corner, and they're like, oh, what's all this Christmas stuff? And I'm like, oh, well, this is, you know, a scare zone we're doing called Dark Christmas. And they're like, well, you know, we have a Krampus movie coming out. And we're like, really? And then we found out that this gentleman was doing it. You guys know Mike Doherty. Chris, you and I met Mike, I think the first time, oh, it was many years ago. It was right after the movie Trick or Treat came out.
Yeah, we had lunch with him.
Yeah, we had lunch with him, and at that time we were talking about Trick or Treat, which we're still talking about all these years later. But as soon as we found out that Mike was involved in Krampus, that kind of piqued our interest. Because we knew Mike's aesthetic. You know, we're both big fans of Trick or Treat, I'm sure. How many of you guys like Trick or Treat? They tell me there's a sequel coming. I've been waiting for this, you know. So, you know, you never know in the future you might
One
see
thing
that.
about Mike is that, and you've seen some of probably his other films, he has leans and directs things more towards practical effects. And practical effects, yeah, kind of like a 1980s, kind of like really cool horror film kind of feeling. And those things kind of lean towards our live action version attractions that we try to put together. So something like what he would put together, because nowadays you're going to have directors that might do a lot of CGI or practical effects or tie those together. He seems to lean towards more practical, which works with us perfectly.
So, this past week we announced that we're doing a maze based on Krampus. This is the key art for it. You know, I'm sure a lot of you guys that follow this really closely on the internet, you probably figured it out before we announced it, right? Yeah, because there's this facade that we're building out on Metro sets, and I was just out there the other day, and I was like, oh, now I know why they figured it out, because look at all the icicles on it. We got pretty far along with this facade, so if you happen to be driving the tram, you're going through the back lot, you're passing right by that house. But of course, you know, when we looked to do the facade for this attraction, we definitely wanted to set it at the Ingle House. There's a couple of different houses in the film,
Yes,
actually.
there are a couple different houses and a couple different ones to kind of like combine and choose and make it work out. There's a neighbor's house as well that has big bay windows actually in it. And we lean toward that, and we did a little combination. But you can see here that the main player in this is the snow, in the frost.
So this maze is located out on the Metro sets. If you were at Halloween Horror Nights last year, it's where Crimson Peak was. So people get a real long look at this facade.
Yes.
So we have a lot of stuff going on with this facade for the event, including Krampus. If you guys, and everybody on the internet, they're like, what's that post? There's a post coming out of the roof of the house, and they're all, you know, trying to speculate on what that is. Well, that's for Krampus. Because there's going to be a big programmed audio lighting sequence that happens with this particular maze. You're going to hear the Carol of the Bells, because if you watch that movie, there's an awesome custom version of Carol of the Bells, the classic Christmas carol, and all the lyrics are about Krampus. But we're also going to use the grandmother, Omi. She has this great section of the movie. It's all done with stop motion animation, but she kind of tells the story of Krampus. So we're going to use that audio, and every time Krampus's name is called out, we're going to reveal him on the roof of the house. A big part of this house, obviously, is the snow and all the decor. But we always look for those little details.
Absolutely.
This particular film, I went through 32,000 still photographs to try to find the couple of hundred images that I would give Chris to inform his design. But this is one of those images I selected because I love the idea of the delivery guy, you know, dropping off the gifts that are in the front of the house. So you'll see that in front of the house as well. You'll also see his van covered in snow, and you'll see him.
Yes. You know, we've been talking to our casting director, Scott Kleckner.
Who I think is here as well.
Who's here. A little bit in respect to this guy, we were trying to get him a really good Frozen look, and besides doing makeup on his face that would, you know, have blue look, you know, what we're trying to do is get a little snow, frosty crystallization. So we reached out to him, and even though this individual doesn't have a lot of facial hair, we've talked to him about, hey, can we look at casting somebody or talk to the individuals that you've casted to grow some facial hair that we can really just give them a really cool Frozen look, a little bit better than what's shown here.
So in the film, obviously, he dies. But for us, we're going to use him for a very special function. He's going to be out in front of the maze, and he's going to be tied into our Twitter password giveaway. This is actually a tradition that goes back many, many years. It started with a maze called Hostel. Did anybody see Hostel? So when Chris and I were meeting with Eli Roth to do the Hostel maze, Eli had a whole bunch of ideas, and he said, you know, I want those girls, those really hot Eastern European girls to be out in front of the maze. And at the time I was like, well, what are they gonna do? You know, they're just gonna like hang out? So Eli saved like everything from Hostel. Do you remember he came and he brought us like his computer? He
Yes,
just hooked his computer up to your computer, and he just dumped every single thing he had from Hostel. But one of the things he had was the file they used to make the business cards for Elite Hunting.
Yeah.
So that's when we kind of had the idea, oh, this would be cool. Why don't we do something with Twitter where each night we tweet a different password, and if you give the password to the girls from Hostel, you know, they give you a business card. They had this really awesome routine they did where they'd take the card out, they'd kiss it, so they'd get a little lipstick and print on it, and then they'd give it back to you. And I remember the first time, I didn't know if this would work at all, and I remember the first time I did it, I walked up and I gave the password to the girls, and they took the business card out and they kissed it, and then they both took me like arm in arm, and they started like walking me into the maze, and they're like welcoming me, and the light bulb went off, and I turned to the girls and I'm like, now I understand why, you know, in horror movies people always go, oh gosh, you know, don't go in there, and then they go in there. And in Hostel, you know, don't follow the advice of these really hot girls in a bar and go to this art show. And I turned to the girls and I'm like, I would totally be the guy that would follow you into a torture chamber. It totally makes sense. So we've been doing this for years and years. Last year was This Is the End. But this year it's going to be Krampus. So if you give the Twitter password to the Frozen delivery guy, in return he's going to give you a retro vintage Krampus postcard. And there's a couple of examples up on the screen right now. And Chris mentioned earlier, there's a couple of different houses in Krampus, and this is actually, I think this is the neighbor's house.
Yes.
But for our maze, we just love this look. I remember when I showed you these pictures and when we saw the film, you really latched onto this.
Oh yeah, you can tell it's a great disarray. It's something that we do and do well. Like we talked about the snow and how we're going to try to achieve that. You know, on the outside it's a little different. It's got to be kind of semi-permanent. We're outside, we're running like 2 months. So I have to think about in those respects of trying to make it semi-permanent, and even inside here where you got walking foot traffic, you know, we're trying to pull out all of our scenic tricks for this.
And I noticed when I walked the maze the other day, because it's actually really far along scenically, it's probably got, what, another week to go scenically?
Yes.
And then we start loading in props and dressing. I can see where they're going to do all the spray foam and the snow piles, and it just keeps going through the house. So again, this is something we latched on to that had a little bit more to do with the neighbor's house, but we thought it would be cool. These are just some of the behind-the-scenes images from the film that I grabbed.
Yeah, it's as though like the ceilings are almost ripped out, and big snow berms and snow drifts are happening inside the house, and that's what we're going to do too. We're going to take these drifts and put them within all of our furniture, and our prop people are probably not going to be too happy with that once we spray all that into place, but nonetheless, here in this picture,
sorry, I'll go back.
It's a matter of details. This is one of the 30,000 pictures that John went through that we grabbed onto, and really trying to give that feeling of Christmas with a frosted poinsettias and little red votive candles as well. So something like that you'll see in there throughout transition hallways.
Yeah, we go for like every detail. I noticed like, oh look, there's like pictures of the family.
Yes.
So when I went through the 32,000 pictures, I found, oh, they did one day on the film. I think what Mike told me it was the first day. They got the cast together and they just did all these family pictures, and they drove around LA, and they went to like a photography studio, did a bunch of cheesy Christmas pictures. But I was able to get all those. So when you're going through the house, you see all the same real pictures that were in the movie. I just love the look of the house with the frosted look. It just sets the tone for this entire maze. We're going to go to the attic. A lot of bizarre stuff happens up there with evil toys. But again, we love this particular look of the attic where everything's been frozen over. I walked this the other day. It's going to be an awesome set where you've got the ceiling with all of the beams and everything.
And you can see all the icicles hanging off of those beams overhead. Yeah, and it's a whole frosted look. Oh, the burnt Christmas tree.
I've been searching for this scent for like weeks now. I want the smell of burnt Christmas tree.
Burnt evergreen.
Yeah, they don't make it. We're going to have to combine scents. But when you walk into the house, you want to see that burnt Christmas tree. You want to smell it. You want to have the smoke from it. There's another detail in the house that I thought was really, really cool. It's when poor Howard Jr. gets sucked up the chimney by the evil gingerbread men and the elves. So you're going to see that. You're going to see Howard's fat little legs kicking away.
Yes. Here, I'll give you a little secret. If you have saw the last time we did La Llorona, and one of the last scenes that we did in that attraction where she's coming through the roof and has consumed the little boy with his kicking legs. So those might be pretty familiar when you walk through this, because we have to reuse a lot. If we come up and actually create like a pneumatic gag in something, and if we can reuse it, we sure will.
Talking about the characters that you can expect to see in the maze, the cool thing about this film is they engaged Weta Design, which has done so many great things over the years. And these are just two of the elves. There's actually, I think, six different ones that we've got in the maze. So we get all of the visuals, not only from the film, but we get all the visuals from Weta, so that we can recreate all these things and they look exactly accurate to the film. Of course, there's the character of Krampus himself. A big thing for Mike, when Chris and I got together talking to him, is in the beginning he just wanted to tease, Krampus. So you see like a shadow, or you see a hand coming through the wall. So it's going to build up until we reveal him. There's evil toys.
Yes.
Some of which that are very, very tricky to figure out how we're going to do these with live actors in a live setting, but we've embraced the challenge. So some of the ones we're doing, the angel, the evil teddy bear.
Yeah, I saw an actual video. You saw that too, yes? So we've seen something in respect to this actually. Don't want to give a lot away. That's why we're trying to be a little bit vague. We want all this to be a really cool surprise. Yeah.
And when I saw the movie, I went, well, there's a Horror Night scene.
I mean, this movie is stocked full of characters, like I said before, that we can really utilize. So here's another one. Here's another one.
I think these were done by the designer Pumpkin Rot. And in the movie, you don't get that good a look at them. So, this is just a couple of them, but just to show you guys what they look like when they were building them for the movie. They're just really cool. They're very simple, but they're just really, really cool designs. The faces are all different, so the snowmen are going to be a big part of this.
Really cool, but scary.
And then, thought this was a really cool visual. They call it Hellmouth in the film. It's when Max, the boy, is confronting Krampus at the end of the movie. So we're going to recreate the scene where you go to Hellmouth. And then, for whatever reason, this is the year of featuring the same environments multiple times in mazes. And in Krampus, I think we experienced the living room like 3 different times?
3 times.
But towards the end of the movie, there's this idyllic, happy, Christmas morning. That's another scent I've been tracking down is, that kind of quintessential scent of Christmas morning. But, we want you at the end of the maze to have the happy ending. And then it doesn't end so happy. And just a real quick tease, our prop crew, they're so good, all the people that work on our prop crew, that make all these things from scratch for us. Because it's not like they just give it to us from the movies. So this is a picture you sent me the other day.
Yes, and I saw these last week, actually. This is from our prop team, Richard Mayer and Tony Lindis, who run that group. And these are some little polyfoam gingerbread men that we'll have throughout. And they look great. I mean, they look, and the color looks just like in the texture gingerbread, actually. It's great.
And not to give anything away, but in the scene where these guys are featured, when you go through the maze, obviously it's in the kitchen, because that's where it took place in the movie. But there's a series of tableaus, I'll call them, that get revealed. And they're all kind of our little original spin on what the gingerbread men would be doing once they were, let loose inside the kitchen. So when you go through the maze, pay attention to that. And that's Krampus.
Yeah.
All righty, let's talk about The Exorcist. Oh my God.
Yeah.
For 11 years, we have been chasing the rights to The Exorcist. Quite simply because, in my opinion, it is the scariest movie ever made.
I concur.
It's the only movie that scares me, like really scares me. Like I actually have a really hard time watching that film.
Yeah, same with me.
Particularly alone. And this is why. Because not everybody's scared of The Exorcist. I mean, I know I've talked to lots of people and I'll say, oh, did you see The Exorcist? Does it scare you? And they're like, eh. And I'm like, how is that? How could it not scare you? It really depends how you were raised, Obviously, by this picture, I was raised Catholic. That's me as an altar boy in 1975. This is why The Exorcist scares the hell out of me. In the early 1970s, my mom, who's a Catholic theologian, author of 7 or 8 books now, she had like a Bible study that she would host at night at this church. So she would always, bring the kids along. And, I would just wander around the church at night staring at all the statues. I was really tripping out on all the statues because, Catholic churches, they have a lot of statues. And late at night, they're really, really creepy. And I remember my mom was speaking at a Bible study and this woman stood up in the back of the room and just went, she just started like speaking in tongues basically. But she claimed to be possessed by the devil and, and she was just railing away and my mom was like so calm and she just like confronted the demon and everything, it was really dramatic. And then as a result of this, I had like nightmare after nightmare after nightmare, and it didn't help that around the same time, my parents, you have to understand that in the 60s when the Summer of Love kind of ended, and I was born in the Summer of Love, I was born in 67, all of the people that were like hippies in the early 70s, they all became religious freaks, basically. They kind of just went, well, drugs burned me out, so I'm just going to go right into this. And my parents just had like this open door policy. They would take in anybody, and there were always these like drifter-like people, and they would always come to my parents' Bible study. One of them somehow got a hold of our phone number and would call at all hours of the night. And you would pick up the phone, and this happened to me as a young kid, and they would be like, I'm going to kill your father, I'm going to, it was just, I won't even go into it because it was so disturbing. And what we eventually found out, we put a tap on the phone, we went to the police and everything, and it turned out to be a guy in a mental hospital. And he was using his, like, okay, it's time for you to make your call, and he was using his call our family and terrorize us with all this demonic stuff. And so that caused me to have like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of nightmares, and I would wake up screaming, and they would like call priests, and this is all true. And so the trippy part of this is apparently at the end of it, I got up at church and spoke in front of 1,000 people and like told the whole story. I have no memory of that. I didn't even know about it until a few years ago when my mom goes, "Oh, remember that time you did this?" And I'm like, "What?" And then it kind of all came back. And the reason that I tie this in with The Exorcist is this.
Yes.
Do you guys know what this is? Okay, for those of you who don't, and Chris, I'm sure you remember this, this is what's called the band trailer. It's an early trailer that came out for The Exorcist, and it's almost all done with still imagery, and it's reversed. It's just like this image of Linda Blair here. It's all negative imagery. And it starts out with a narrator, and he's talking about Max von Sydow's character coming to the house and a little girl, and then it just goes into this trippy piece of music and a bunch of flash frames. And the reason it's called the band trailer is it got accused of having subliminal imagery in it, and it really didn't. But, they yanked it from like movie theaters, but the scary part is in the early 70s, they would show this on television. They would show this during the day when you were watching like, Gilligan's Island and stuff like that. And H.R. Puffin stuff, which tripped me out for an entirely different reason. But do you remember seeing this, Chris, in the 70s?
Yeah, every time this commercial or the other Exorcist commercial, or honestly Texas Chainsaw, I ran over and turned them off. I couldn't watch it. I had a religious upbringing, a little bit different than John's, but yeah, something like this is very real to me in a sense. So that's why, in my mind, that it scares me so much as well.
Yeah, I didn't even see The Exorcist until I was in high school. That was when I finally saw it. I saw it at like a party. I think it was a cast party, like a theater party. And I remember driving home that night and not wanting to look at my rearview mirror. And I was like, 17 or something. But I was convinced that if I looked at my rearview mirror, I'd see Reagan. And so I attribute a lot of that to the band trailer. Because, in the 70s, early 70s, you could get away with that. They would show you, here's, an ad for kids' toys, and here's a Marlboro commercial, and here's a booze commercial, and let's throw in an R-rated horror film. Times have changed. They don't do this anymore.
If you haven't seen it, tonight, get on YouTube, turn out the lights,
and check it out. Because it's still terrifying to this day.
Yeah, I do that at home. Well, to really trying to, and if you watch and look at really what the imagery and what's really happening in the imagery, him and I have watched it multiple times. And actually that, and he'll agree with me, is an inspiration to our attraction and what we're really trying to do. And that's all I'm going to tell you in that respect, because you got to come and check it out.
So when you try to decide what the facade for The Exorcist is, it's pretty simple. It's got to be the McNeil house. This is the house from earlier in the film in the daytime, but this is what we're going for.
That's so iconic in the movie poster. It's just at least when I think of Exorcist or think of any imagery about that, I come onto this, and then the way that Reagan looks. Those are like really the two big elements. And really, we sat down with John and was like, these are the two that we have to have in here.
And now we just need the elements to cooperate with us, because you want that perfect shaft of light. So, of course we have smoke effects to help achieve that. So we just have to make sure that the wind doesn't blow it. When you talk about environments, this is going to be a very short part of the presentation. There's this, the house entry, and there's this, Reagan's room. And that's really the challenge.
That's it. There it is.
That's it. 2 scenes, hope you enjoy the maze. But it's funny, we've been trying for 11 years to do The Exorcist. We finally got the rights, and I don't know about you, but as soon as I got that call that we were going to actually do this, I was hit with this wave of panic. Because in all these years, I never really thought how we were going to do The Exorcist. I just really wanted to do it, because it scared me so much, and because to me it was the pinnacle of what horror is, I wanted to do it, but I never sat down to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And when you boil it down to its essence,
a little bit.
You thought about it more than me, I'm sure.
I thought about it a little
to
bit.
me,
because I found it so puzzling. How can we figure this out? Because you guys have been through all these mazes that we do, and this is different. This is completely different, and would be, and have to be.
Well, it is. We have our 3 criteria that we always filter everything through as to whether we decide to do a maze, and it's awareness. This movie has it for sure, no question. Second, environments.
Yeah.
Doesn't have it. 3, great characters that you can replicate with live actors.
Yeah.
At its essence, this movie is about a 12-year-old girl who never gets out of bed. Right? So how the hell to do The Exorcist? So that's why Chris was referencing the band trailer. The very, very first time you and I sat down to talk about this, I pulled it up on YouTube, and I went, watch this. I don't know how or why or what it's going to mean yet, but this is our maze. We got to figure out how to do this, because this is what scared me so bad. And of course, you have to do all of the iconic scenes, but all of those scenes take place in that room. So looking at those scenes, obviously the first time they come in the room's going crazy. The objects are flying all over the wall. The records are smashing into the wall. Again, not particularly easy to do in a live attraction where every 10 seconds there's another group of people walking through the scene. These are practical effects in the 1970s that you could do for a movie. Extremely difficult to do for us. But we're going to do it.
Just more good detail here, yeah.
But you find little things, just this is one I grabbed when I was screen capping the film. The artwork of Reagan's is so cool. So it's finding its way inside the bedroom, but figuring out how to manipulate that bedroom. That's why I think I've said before, this particular cast, the main role is called Blackout Performer, right? Those are the people who typically work behind the scenes in our mazes. Like if you went through Crimson Peak, if you walked down that hallway, you might have noticed there was a doorknob that was just jiggling by itself, very haunted mansion. It was actually an idea of Guillermo del Toro's. He was like, oh, John, Chris, when you go down the hallway, there's got to be, there's got to be a doorknob and it's jiggling. And so we cast a guy, stand behind that door, jiggle the doorknob, and he had a little monitor.
Yes, he did.
So he could see the reaction of people. Yep. But he was super consistent, and when I took Guillermo through that maze, he's like, the doorknob! And I was like, yeah, the doorknob, it's awesome.
Just the little things,
This maze has more of that type of performer than it has Reagan or anybody else. Because so much of it is effects related. So much of it is practical effects. And
paranormal related too. And those are always tough for us to do.
Oh yeah. Another, scene in the movie, again, takes place in Reagan's bedroom, but the bedroom changes. Now it's got all the padding so that Reagan doesn't hurt herself. But I know we talked about this scene a lot. But to me, when Karras first interviews the demon, that's kind of a key scene. It's not a scary scene, right? He's not going to be like, hi, I'm Father Karras, what's your name? And then turn around and go, ah, try to scare somebody. That's stupid. We're not going to do that. So it's an entire scene where what's happening inside the room, nobody's trying to boo scare you. So it's actually really, really, really risky to do this kind of stuff. It's very theatrical, but it's so much in the spirit of The Exorcist. To me, if we didn't have a scene where good and evil are confronting each other, it wouldn't be The Exorcist. No. So we have to find other ways of scaring you, which I will not give away. You'll just have to go through the maze and find out what those are. Obviously, you got to have, it goes without saying, you got to have this scene, the 180-degree head spin. Again, it's a practical effect, but it's such a famous one. And again, where does it take place? It's in the bedroom. Pea soup. The vomit scene. Again, it's, and it's funny, when you do a screen cap like that, you can really tell it's the stunt woman, can't you? Because obviously this was the stunt woman who did this scene instead of Linda. But again, you can't do The Exorcist and not do this scene. And I was sampling the scent of vomit yesterday, a couple days ago.
See, I don't do that.
No, that's my job. Every year,
I don't get invited to those meetings.
Every year I get this little meeting on my schedule and it says, Horror Nights scent test. And I'm like, oh God, really? It's already that time of year.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of them are actually kind of nice. You know, I'm like, oh, pumpkin, lovely. Lavender, delicious. Burnt human flesh, not so good, you know. Decomposing flesh, worse. And then you get to vomit. And they must have changed the formula, because I swear it's so much worse. I don't even think we're going to turn this on. I think we're just going to park it in the room and leave it off. It'll do the job. Another cool detail in The Exorcist, it's freezing cold. I think you know when they shot the movie, they refrigerated the set so that all of that breathing, it's all real in the movie. It was before computer animation, so all those poor actors were frigidly cold when they were making the movie. But that's another kind of key moment in The Exorcist. You got to kind of try to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
So we are.
That's just creepy.
Yeah, it's just wrong. The serpent tongue. Levitation.
Demonic
power of Christ
tricks.
compels you.
Yes.
It's funny, we did the comedic version of this last year, and this is the end. And at the time, we had no idea we were going to do The Exorcist, and now it's kind of come full circle.
No, we'll get her up in the air like that, though. That's what we're looking to do.
One of my favorites, this particular shot in the movie, when the demon is kind of at its apex, and it's just, she's reaching up in the air and screaming, and the wall disappears, and you see Pazuzu's statue behind it. So another thing that we think is essential to trying to do a maze based on The Exorcist. So it's such a huge honor and kind of a burden to try to do right by that property. It's such a personal thing for Chris and I. We love this property so much. The pressure to pull it off and do it right, but every bit as much, it's the pressure to do this man right. This is Dick Smith.
Yes.
Before there was Stan Winston, before there was Rick Baker, there was Dick Smith.
Yes.
One of the true pioneers in the movie industry, in the world of makeup effects. This is a great picture of Dick, and it has, here's a test. Can you name those? Do you know all those makeups? Sorry, I put you on the spot. Ghost Story on the far right.
Yeah, Ghost Story. Altered States is in the middle. Exorcist. Is that
Little Big Man?
Little Big Man.
That's Dustin Hoffman.
Is that another Ghost Story?
Yeah, I think it is Ghost Story. Yeah. Dick Smith passed away not too long ago.
A couple years ago.
But he was a genius of makeup. So, we have to, in our makeup, we have to, raise ourselves to that bar. It's also personal because I had this when I was a kid. Did you have it?
Yeah, I did too. I got that for Christmas.
Do you know what this is? Did anybody have this when they were kids?
Dick Smith Monster Makeup Kit.
Might be that we're just really old now.
I guess we are.
Nobody has it. This was actually something you could buy when we were kids in the 70s. Mm-hmm. They made this makeup kit to teach kids how to do horror makeup, and it had all these molds and they called it flex flesh, I think.
It was like a vinyl
that you put into the molds and baked them. It's probably really dangerous. I was always in my mom's oven, like cooking stuff. But you could make the Exorcist makeup, and you could do all these amazing makeups. And this was my foray into makeup. And when I was a little kid, around this time, I really wanted to be a makeup artist. That's what I wanted to do after I stopped wanting to be a priest. When you go back and look at all those school books your parents saved, from first grade to fourth, it was like priest, horror makeup artist.
But see, it makes a lot of sense, because that's essentially not the priest part, but the horror makeup artist part, that's essentially what I wanted to do. And essentially, in my mind, it was to make monsters, and I'm sure that's the same with John, because I know I looked at Dick Smith and others, Jack Pierce, Rick Baker, and those are my childhood heroes. They're not so much sports, it's more entertainment, horror-driven.
So when we look at Dick Smith's makeup in The Exorcist, these are some behind-the-scenes stills from the movie. You forget how young Linda was. That's Linda being made up right there. That's what she looked like when they were making The Exorcist. They did a bunch of tests before they settled on the final look. I don't know how many of you guys have seen these. I just thought it would be cool to share them. This is one of the first tests. There's another one. Then they just went all witchy poo on the makeup. And I think what Dick said about this is he had tried so many different looks, he just wanted to go way overboard with like a witch look, but it started to inform his design.
Yeah, and you can see here, what he ended with was something just really, really subtle, but it just says a whole lot. You look at those other ones and they're just much more theatrical, more extreme, something more that you would see in the 70s, but when this is latched upon, this is realistic.
And I think what's so scary about it is the little girl comes through it. And that's why it's so scary to us today, is it isn't some monster. You can still see that little girl underneath it.
He's absolutely right, because, and you don't have to, if you backed up into some of those other looks, one more. She looks like she's in her 50s, you know, and it doesn't look possessed.
Well, Dick did, you know, The Godfather too. He did Marlon Brando, and this looks like, you know, Brando cheeks.
Yes.
But for us, we divide his makeup into two stages. This is stage one. She's got some of those lacerations and cuts, but it's much more fresh. It's much more bloody. And this is stage two, and it gets a little bit more gangrene kind of looking.
Coloration, but still subtle. It's still subtle, still looks real.
And for us, on this particular maze, it's going to be Patrick McGee. I don't know if you guys know Pat McGee, McGee Effects. If you liked our Mother Alien in AVP, that's Pat McGee.
Yes.
So Patrick's often done a lot of our creatures. He did Crimson Peak with us last year. We're tapping Patrick to do The Exorcist.
So we're looking at doing these into really high-end silicone masks, actually. So what we're really trying to do is emulate the makeup and what Dick Smith created and just nail it. And we know Patrick would be able to do that. So the technology that we're trying to do with these masks is something new, something we've recently developed, and it's going to, I mean, visually look exactly like the film, and that's what we're trying to do.
And also because our casting director, Scott Kleckner, who's in the house somewhere here, is so good, we gave him like crazy parameters, like we want only girls that are like 4'11", and he did it. So hats off to Scott. Hopefully they're 18. Scott, I forgot to ask you that. I'm going to show up to rehearsal, there's going to be all these kids. I'm like, oh, well. What Dick Smith was also the master of, and probably what he was best at, even better than horror, was old age makeup. I mentioned Marlon Brando, he did that. Dustin Hoffman in a movie called Little Big Man. Salieri in Amadeus. F. Murray Abraham, if you've ever seen that movie, that's Dick Smith. But one of his most amazing ones was Father Merrin, Max von Sydow's character in The Exorcist. And everybody forgets, that's what he looked like.
Yeah,
that's what Max von Sydow looked like when they made The Exorcist. He wasn't that old. I believe he was in his 40s.
Yes.
But Dick Smith made him look like a man towards the very end of his life.
Yep.
And it's, to this day, some of the very, very best old age makeup there ever was done in any movie in any time period. But Father Merrin is going to be a part of our maze as well. Also Father Karras. It's kind of the quintessential, shot of Father Karras towards the end of the film. And this guy, Pazuzu. Pazuzu is the demon in The Exorcist. And how you see him in the movie, you barely see him. It's just in these quick little flash frame hits. They're like, maybe like 15 frames of film. But the face, when you actually stop and look at it, it's terribly scary. And what it represents is the devil, the demon. Particularly Pazuzu is the demon that ties back to the beginning of the movie when Father Merrin's doing an archaeological dig in Iraq and he sees that trippy statue. It's supposed to be the manifestation of that. So Pazuzu is going to play a fairly significant role in our maze as well. And that's The Exorcist, because we're not going to tell you that much. Hopefully when you go through the maze, you're going to understand what we were talking about the band trailer and all this stuff, because it really informed the way we approach this maze. And of course, at the end of the day, we want to scare the living daylights out of you, but also be faithful to the film. So let's do a quick announcement. It's not going to be a maze. But there is another maze that will be announced. We're not done yet. There'll be another announcement probably within the next 2 weeks. And I think it's going to be one that all the fans freak out about. Do you like the lineup so far?
Yeah. Is this not the best lineup so far that we've ever had? Huh? Yes.
Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, Michael Myers, The Exorcist, Krampus, Walking Dead, The Purge Electioneer. All right, so we have a long, long history of working with Jason Blum and Blumhouse Films, not only on The Purge, but Insidious. We love Jason. He's a great partner of ours. He's always kind enough to send Chris and I scripts, way before the movies ever come out. Last year he was at Horror Nights and he goes, we're making another Purge movie. And I go, oh, really? Tell me, what's it about? And he told me it was about, the election, and I thought, well, that's perfect. The timing of that, little did we know back then how perfect the timing would be, because we kind of signed up for it way back then. We kind of have to rethink the way this year for a couple of different reasons. You might have noticed there's not a maze over at Parisian Courtyard. We had Halloween there last year. This year we have Texas over in the Waterworld queue. So that whole section of the park that used to feed the scare zones on French Street, there is nothing feeding it. Walking Dead, during Horror Nights, that queue line is going to go all the way down Baker Street. So it kind of eliminates Baker Street for us from being a scare zone, and we've used that for years. So our good friend Pat Quinn came to Chris and I and pitched this idea, and he'll probably cringe when I use the words mega scare zone? He's probably cringing right now. Gauntlet. But Pat's idea that Chris and I loved was a scare zone that isn't just a street that you kind of willy-nilly meander down, enter from any direction. It's something that is a dedicated path through a dedicated section of the top deck that's going to kind of encompass that whole area back there. You'll load into it from Universal Plaza, but it's going to take a big chunk of real estate on that side of the park, and it's going to be themed to the Purge, but it's going to be, a pulsed scare zone as opposed to something that you just walk through. So it's a lot of performers. It gives us the opportunity to let our actors hide and scare you, so they're just not hanging out in the open. So we're taking that whole section of the park and turning it into a Purge Gauntlet or a Purge Mega Scare Zone or whatever you want to call it. And because the Purge movies, particularly election year, it's like they threw the kitchen sink at this movie. There's just so many. How many of you guys have seen it? There's so many different characters and cool characters.
Yes.
And some you miss if you blink, So we decided to really embrace that. So the entire Scare Zone program this year is all Purge, all the way across, including downstairs, including Metro Set. And we're going to be playing off of all the Purge movies, but heavily favoring the most recent film. This was one of the teaser posters for the Purge with Lincoln. You know what's funny about that? That's Terror Tram last year.
That was us.
Great minds think alike.
Yes.
We had no idea that they were doing this for the movie. This was an original that I think Pat came up with, actually. Yeah. And it was funny when we read the script, I was like, oh, there's like these guys dressed like presidents. That sounds like what we just did. And it's, I know the writer of The Purge. He was writing it before we ever did Horror Nights last year, so it's not like he got the idea from us. We just both thought of the same thing at the same time. But we love those characters. They're called the murder tourists in the script. They're going to be a big part of what you see. We love the Bling Girls. Thought they were really cool. They're going to play a big part of our opening ceremony, but also be featured in our scare zones as well. Love this character. What's cool about working with Blumhouse is they give us creative license a lot of times to also bring our own creativity to it, like we did with Lincoln and Washington and Ben Franklin, and there's a bunch of characters last year that we invented for Terror Tram. So I'm going to share a few of the ones that Mr. Quinn came up with, that Chris and I worked with him on this past year, and see what you guys think. Pat's idea for Lady Liberty was to do as a still walker, because we just thought that would be so cool, and to do it all light up like you see in the film. So that's our design for Lady Liberty as a still walker.
That was illustrated by Lucas Coleshaw, and so is this as well, as Uncle Sam.
It has nothing to do with the Purge movie, but
it's just cool.
Sounded cool, so we decided to do it. Another still walker. We've actually got a lot of still walkers in this part of the park. Here's our go-go dancers design. Red state, blue state. More still walkers. There's the whole bling girl thing where they're all wearing kind of like the EMD EL lighting.
Yeah, EL wire. Yeah, we're starting to, you know, you can tell every year we try to take steps forward into doing things. This year into some of the costumes that we're trying to tie in some of the EL wire and such, and like what you had saw with our Lady Liberty, and we're riffing off of that into some of these other ones.
We always have chainsaw performers, so these guys are like, you know, delegates. With red, white, and blue chainsaws. I thought that was a nice touch.
A little barbershop quartet-esque. These masks actually are Immortal Mass type, you know, so we do some off-the-shelf silicone.
Yeah, when we started,
well,
we didn't do any silicone at all. Now, working with Immortal Mask, we're doing a lot of it.
Yes.
I like this one.
That's great.
And if you're going to do that, then you got to do this.
Yes. See? So these are, we have seen and saw the sculpts. These are through Larry Bones, Boneyard Effects, and these will be these really awesome big foam latex pullover masks. Can't wait.
And then last but not least, this is just, I think this is the essence of Pat Quinn, if I may say so. I've worked with Pat for a long, long time.
Yes.
He always comes up with the weirdest stuff.
No, it's like I said, the different stuff. He thinks different, huh? Is that awesome?
I just call them teddy bear freaks. they're just part of the scare zone as well. So that's just some of the stuff that you can expect to see in the Purge Gauntlet / Mega Scare Zone. All right. Let's give away some tickets. So I have in my hand this lovely keepsake Exorcist certificate that says you're invited to experience Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights with complimentary front line tickets to the event and an exclusive behind-the-scenes maze tour with the creators of Halloween Horror Nights. So I always do this in the form of a trivia question. I don't know, can you guys give us house lights? Because I know we got to be getting close to wrapping up here. So we can see you guys. If not, I'm going to be reacting to the shadows. Let's see. Okay, thank you guys. Right on. Oh, there's a lot of you. Okay, we're going to do this in the form of a trivia question. How we're going to do this is I'm going to ask a trivia question. The first person I see raise their hand that I see, I'm going to call out. Please don't yell it out, because then I'm going to tear this into pieces and nobody gets anything. Okay?
Oh no, he's done that before. Please, don't yell it out.
It's going to be Exorcist related. In the movie The Exorcist, obviously, Linda Blair plays Reagan. Who is the voice of the demon, the actress's name? All the way in the back, right there. Yes? Yep, yellow hat. Give it to me one more time. Mercedes McCambridge, you're absolutely right!
Wow.
I almost tore it up. You cried. But you are right. So when we're done here, come up, you can get the certificate. We'll see you at Horror Nights. And I think, John, how are we doing for time? Are we wrapped? All right, let's do some Q&A. We didn't do Q&A almost at all in the entire time we've been doing conventions. Or I could show you the lovely dress I just bought my 3-year-old daughter. Isn't that awesome? Go spend a lot of money out there. There's some really talented people. But if you guys have any questions, we've got a few minutes. Let's answer some. Right down in front. And there might be some people who could... Go ahead. VIP. You know, that's not Chris and I's thing. We don't decide like the different ticket types. So I don't know at this point whether that's part of the mix in Horror Nights. What I do know, how many of you guys get the multi-night pass? Okay. This I do know, and I can speak, you know, with some sense of authority on it. We will be doing the multi-night. Everybody always asks about that, and I didn't know for sure if we were or not. We are doing it. So there will be a multi-night ticket. I can't tell you how many nights yet, although it's a good amount of nights. You're going to dig it. That is going to go on sale about the middle of August, and you'll be able to, and we're not going to sometimes we've limited it to a tiny amount of people, and it sells out super quick. We did get permission for them to expand it, so I don't think there'll be any problems getting the multi-night ticket. Right there.
How long do you think The Exorcist will be in, like, walk time?
In length of experience. Yeah, it's being built in the Revenge of the Mummy queue, so it's where This Is the End was last year. I actually never clock them. You know why? People go at really different rates. You know, some people go really slow, and some people book. Last year, did you guys go through Halloween last year? I went through that maze like so many times last year, and I would always slip in behind groups. And I remember I slipped in behind a group last year, and they lost me in the maze. I couldn't keep up with them. And there was nobody in front of them. They were just jamming. And I literally, like, eventually caught up with them and, like, tapped them on the shoulder. I'm like, slow down. You waited in line a long time. You know, take it in. So it's hard to say in minutes, but it's where we've built Saw, Hostel, This Is the End, Silent Hill. It's that location. Okay, right here.
So now that you have The Exorcist, what is your next dream property to catch?
Ooh. I don't know if I have one, honestly. I mean, the question was, you know, what's the next dream property after The Exorcist? The Exorcist was my dream property. I had a lot of dream properties. We've done them all.
The only thing I had two other things was, but not the first one, the second one, Evil Dead, Dead by Dawn.
Evil Dead 2? I'd go along on that.
That one, and also the original Thing. The original.
Ah.
Yeah.
John Carpenter's thing?
Rob Bottin, effects artist extraordinaire, da-da-da.
I'm a classic horror, you know, fan. That's what my passion is. So for me, it would always be to do a classic, you know, Universal Monsters maze. I just have resisted the temptation because, you know, just because you have to know your audience, and you have to realize that, you know, the main audience for Horror Nights is 18 to 26. I've always wondered whether they would find that scary, and it's, you know, there's a good chance they might not. So that's the only reason why we haven't tackled that. But, you know, hopefully before I go, that'll be, you know, one I'd like to do. Okay, how about back there in the hat? Yep.
Can you say if Wizarding World of Harry Potter is going to be open during Horror Nights or not?
I can't actually. That's not anything that I can speak about. Like I said, we're the creative people who produce the mazes. We don't get into the operation of the event side of it, so I have to wait till we make announcements about certain things. When tickets go on sales, we usually make a big announcement that says, this is like all the rides are to be open, so I always have to defer to our publicity team on that. Right there. Yes, you. The Master of Ceremonies. We had that? That was something we did? What, describe it for me, because... Oh, a talking character? How'd you like that answer? That was pretty good. I should be a politician.
That was a good answer.
All the way in the back there, yeah, you. Wait till they get to the microphone. This is why I never do Q&A. Because there's things I can answer, there's things I can't.
Okay, well, first of all, I love the event, and that's good. I wanted to ask, with the addition of all four of the like the biggest horror icons, you know, Halloween, Freddy vs. Jason, Texas Chainsaw, and then with The Exorcist and now The Purge, how do you think it's gonna affect the crowd? Is it gonna be like over the top, or you know? Yeah.
Well, I hope we sell out every night. Well, the one thing I do know is we could probably, every year if we wanted, honestly, we could probably go Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, because that's how much people request it and want to see it. Anytime we've ever done surveys in the past, every company does surveys, you know, We don't do them really anymore for Horror Nights, like ask people what they want to see, because it's always the same answer. Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, Leatherface. There's movies that are like, that maybe come out in a given year that pop into that list, or TV shows. But all the years we did surveys, that never changed. And by the way, Exorcist was always number one.
Yeah.
It was always the top thing people requested.
And I know we didn't talk about some of those other attractions that we're doing, like Michael Myers and Freddy vs. Jason and such, but we're putting new spins on all that. So if you've come in the past and seen some of those that we have done years ago, you got to check this out. This is all new.
Yeah. I think you guys know, but if you don't, Halloween is Halloween 2.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We're doing the second movie. Nightmare on Elm Street is Freddy vs. Jason, which we've never done before. And even Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an original idea of Chris and I's, where we went to the people who own the property and said, we've done your property 3 times. We want to make a sequel that doesn't exist. We want to make a sequel set 5 years after the events of the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so we can have Chop Top be part of it. All the way in the back. Yep.
Test. All right, cool. So what has been your favorite maze to work on this year, and why? Like design-wise?
I'll let the art director answer that. Did you get it?
Scenic-wise, Krampus, just trying to get that overlay of frost and snow, and just trying to get a really good blizzard feeling in California. It's going to be really cool sticking out, but, conceptually, we talked about The Exorcist, and that we put a lot of time in on that. We actually didn't talk about it, but we changed the conceptual design 3 times that and that means after we had drawings finished, and that's like hemming and hawing about it and trying to make it better. So we took actually drawings and kind of like threw them in the trash actually to make it better. So we had put a lot of time and effort and thought into figuring this out.
I think one of the original ideas on Exorcist was to start it in Iraq, which, I know he's laughing, because it was probably my idea. And honestly, I will take responsibility for that being a dumb idea right now. Not that it isn't true to the film. It's absolutely true to the film. That's where the film starts. But as Chris smartly reminded me when I started pitching him that idea, he goes, that's not going to make sense to anybody. And I had to think about it, and he's right. And you know why? Maybe 20% of the people in the audience will have seen the movie. And I hate to say that it's the truth. I think it's the same truth of Halloween. I think it's shocking how many people actually would go back and watch a 1970s horror movie that's in our demographic. And it might be that we're becoming grumpy old men, I don't know. But I think the reason for that is movies in those days, the 70s, they were slow burns.
Yeah.
Watch Halloween, go back and watch it again. The action doesn't really start until about 15 minutes before the end of the movie. And all the way up to that point, it's Michael Myers behind a hedge.
Yes.
Or, it's suspense.
Yep.
The Exorcist kind of goes through that too. That Iraq section is like 20 minutes. It's crazy when you go back and watch it. Jaws is the same way. You don't see the shark in Jaws till 45 minutes into the movie. People don't have the patience for that anymore. They don't make movies like that anymore. You go to see movies now and it's like, the opening title sequence isn't done and they've already killed 10 people. So we did make a lot of changes with Exorcist. Yeah, right here. I could probably hear you without a mic. I can do this.
Well, I do have one question.
The cheetah.
What would be like the...
That'd be fun if I answered your question before you asked it. Fastest land mammal.
What would you guys tackle in terms of a sci-fi horror movie, minusing the thing?
Ooh. Well, The Thing is a good one. Sci-fi horror. The Thing really is to me. I don't have a huge list of sci-fi horror films that I want to do. Well, the original Alien.
Oh yeah.
I put that on the list, or Aliens. And I think we are out of time. So thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys coming out.
For the winner, if you would come up here, I'll give you that certificate. And then Chris and I are going to go out to the show, so we'll see you out there. Thank you.